Tonight is the official public hearing for the adoption of the budget for the 22-23 school year. There were changes to the original budget that we approved in March due to the assessment that Dr. Moore discussed for Chapter 44. Part of the process of So we'll talk more in detail about what that looks like and how that impacted our budget and tax levy. So I'm just going to go over a few of the things that we discussed when we approved the original budget in March, and then get into more detail in terms of, more detail in terms of what changed in the budget and what programs specifically that impacted. So we're almost done. Thankfully, this has been a long budget season for some reason with the changes at the state of New Jersey, as well as some of the things that they decided to do and throw at us in terms of some of the requirements. But the budget process where we are so far is the process begins last October and November, sending out and beginning to evaluate trends in our expenditures by department. We start to identify things that we need based on trend and things that we need based on programs going forward. Budget documents are sent to each of the supervisors for each department, and they come up with what their needs are specifically for their programs based on purchases, and they're also aligned with district initiatives, new programs that maybe we aren't going to be running anymore, or other initiatives directed by the state, as well as the curriculum standards. Once they've determined what those types of things are and things that they think specifically by department, those things are discussed with our curriculum director, and she goes through and determines if those things are all going to fit together. Once it comes from them, it comes back to me. And then we start talking as an administrative team in terms of things that are needed in the district, and we start to look at those things that are maybe extras that weren't budgeted in prior years, or new programs that we need to go forward, and we start to make decisions on how those are, what those are, and how they're going to look going forward. That's all been done. After all of those things are done, then it starts to come to the committee. So you start to see it in your board committees. You start talking about things that specifically relate to you. If it's curriculum, it's before the curriculum committee. If it's personnel related, it's before the personnel committee. If it's O&T, operations and transportation, you're going to get that there. O&T gets the whole bucket because they look at the whole budget in total. After all of those other pieces come back from each of the other committees. Once that's done, we during this whole process, I'm building and putting all the numbers together, and then we wait. We hurry up and wait for the budget to be, the state budget to be done by our governor. And this year he decided to postpone that for 2 weeks, which tightened our timelines a little bit. So we didn't get our budget numbers until the first week of March, where typically it's the last Tuesday of February. So that kind of limited some of the things that we can do. Not only did we have that issue, but we received a $257,000 reduction in our state aid. You'll see later in the presentation, over the last 4 years, we've taken a reduction in our state aid of $1.16 million. So we're doing a lot with a little, and we've been able, I think we talked at the last meeting in terms of we do have declining enrollment from student perspective, and the way we've been able to kind of manage with those reductions in state aid is we've been able to through attrition or some of the other things, been able to continue most of our programming as is, and even enhance several programs based on just tightening up and doing what we need to do, even with those substantial state aid reductions. And we do anticipate a few more. One of the surprises that we did receive this year, and we talked in great length about this at the last meeting, was due to a law that was passed retroactively last fall, and it was called Chapter 44. And what that did is that mandated, and I apologize, it was last spring, it mandated that new employees in a district, and even if you're changing, you're either a new employee or if you're changing districts, you're required to go into what they called the Employee Health Benefit Plan. That was supposed to have been, it was negotiated between the NJEA and our government in New Jersey, and basically the overall goal was to reduce the cost of healthcare, not only for public entities, but also for individuals contributing to those, because we do contribute a percentage of our healthcare costs based on plan type. And what they did is they restructured it completely. The goal was not to offer such a robust plan, but then on the other side, also not have such a large amount contributed. So under Chapter 78, which came into effect, I believe, in 2014, employees, based on their level of coverage and based on their salaries, contributed a percentage of the cost of the premium. On average in our district, it was about 18 to 20% of the cost of the premium. So our family premium is about $45,000 a year. So employees at the $60,000 range were contributing 18% of that. That same plan under EHP, the goal was for that plan to be a lot less money because it was supposed to be more restrictive. So they changed the programming, and instead of it being a cost of the percentage of the premium, it was a cost of a percentage of your salary. So if you put that into perspective, your salary isn't going up as quickly as the cost of the premium. So in and of itself, that's a risk for public entities contributing to the healthcare. The challenge to the carrier was the plan shouldn't be as expensive because we're not offering as much. That didn't come to fruition. So instead of contributing 18% of $45,000, that average employee is contributing 4% of their salary of $60,000. So the district is taking a hit on the difference. So you have the cost of the premium, and they're contributing, $12,000 versus the cost of the premium, which is about $1,000 less, and they're only contributing about $6,000. So the $5,000 is being made up with public funds. The state of New Jersey, part of that law is that any savings that the district recognizes due to the transition to Chapter 44 going to EHP is an automatic reduction in your state aid from the prior year. The challenge was prove it. So the reason we showed, and they automatically reduced our prior year state aid, which is the budget we're living in right now, by $406,000. So in the 22-23 year, that also eliminated a 2% increase year over year that we get for the natural part of the budget. So just by moving to the next year, the cap is a 2% increase year over year. So overall, we lost $416,000. So not only did we lose the $257,000, that was gone no matter what, we lost another $416,000. So what we were forced to do was appeal it, and we weren't the only district. I think we got news today that there were more than 100 districts in the state of New Jersey that were in this position. And it was because of the flaw in the way that they determined the savings. And I use that word very loosely. The reason our district showed a savings is because we transitioned from a private plan to what we call the state health benefit or state insurance fund. So we're now in a health benefit fund with many other districts, and we have a good experience rating. So our savings was shown by transitioning to the plan. Sadly, we transitioned to the plan on 1/1/21, which is when we implemented EHP. So just by looking at the raw numbers, it looks like we had this substantial savings, but it had nothing to do with EHP. We're losing money, and what we had to do is prove that we were losing money by everybody transitioning. We were able to do that, and we were able to restore the $416,000 into our budget. So any programs that were at risk from when we originally budgeted, because I had to prepare the budget based on the fact that we didn't have those fundings, and there were programs that were at risk. Everything has been reinstated, and the budget we were preparing for the needs of the district in March is the budget that we're proposing tonight for final adoption. So once all of that happens, we'll hopefully approve the adopted budget this evening. It then does have to be revised and go back to the county office for final approval. I have 48 hours to put the user-friendly budget on the website, and the budget presentation is already posted. That will go to the website as well. So those are two things that go next. After we post that information and we get our final approvals from the county office, there is some additional paperwork that has to be done. Then what happens is, because we're regional, all of our tax rates get shared with all of our regional counterparts so that they can certify the taxes in each of their towns for the budgets going forward. So that comes once we finalize tonight. It goes to the county office again for final approval. Really, it's just for updates in terms of what we changed and why we changed them and what it meant to the overall budget. Oh, keep forgetting this. So sorry. There we go. And then once we certify our taxes, we're good for another year, hopefully. Although the state budget hasn't been approved yet, so we've been known to have some changes in July. So let's hope that doesn't happen this year. The things that, and these I went into great detail when we talked in March, and I'll hit these things. These are all things that we consider as objectives in preparing the budget from the beginning until we do the final copy. So from an educational perspective, our goals are to be able to implement innovative programs and fulfill the New Jersey standards. We also would like to ensure that each student has access to a full range of programming towards their individual goals and desires. We plan to always sustain and nurture our staff and to grow them to the capacity of the structures to the best of our programs. And we would like to be able to enhance the district's facilities for safety and security measures. And we've been really successful in doing that as well through our planning from a capital reserve perspective. And we'll talk about that as well as we get further on into this presentation and how we've been able to manage paying off our debt service and funding those advances from a facilities perspective with capital reserve planning. And then from a fiscal perspective, our goal is always to be fiscally responsible. We would always like to advance and respect the 22-23 budget by implementing strategies to balance the needs of the district and still maintain our tax levy within our 2% cap. And we have been successful in doing that. The statement of priorities is actually budgetary information that the state of New Jersey requires when we submit our budget, and it's driven by many key areas. The first is to maintain our school system. So we want to, again, enhance our campus security, ensuring that we're focusing on students' wellness and the staffing and programming. We always want to continue our efforts towards the distinction of anti-bias, equity, Achieve New Jersey, NJSLS, and other priorities and mandates. We want to maintain our student support services for a diverse population, maintain comprehensive programs for curricular offerings. Another one of our priorities is to raise standards and expanding opportunities. We want to be able to do that for all students, including students at risk of underperformance. We want to be able to expand and innovate to align with the district's priorities, maintain supports, and grow the ELL population, and we have been successful in doing that with several programs over the last several years. Expand CTE, magnet, and other individualized college and career exploration opportunities. Maintain a comprehensive program of studies integrating wellness and supporting individualized goals for post-secondary fulfillment and success. Align assessment and other measurements to equity goals to close the achievement and opportunity gaps and to address impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, which sadly we are still dealing with on a daily basis. The next priority is to build professionalism, and we do that by expanding a classroom and a school culture that's more attuned to student social and emotional needs. Utilize data from teacher observation and evaluations to frame professional learning. Increase capacity for technology integration. Provide expanded opportunities for teacher leadership. Increase staff-wide literacy on racism, bias, and prejudice in support of anti-racism and anti-bias work. And then to be able to support the staff through continued impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. While we are working towards each of those priorities, we're constantly making sure that we're within protecting our investment, which is our facilities and our plans within the campus. We support staff and conduct facility improvements to increase security. And I don't know if you've been in the 910 building, but over Easter break, we were able to do some additional work there. That's been delayed a little bit with some supply chain slowdowns. We continue to implement controls to support and minimize the tax levy increase. And then the last thing that we're considering always is we have to always plan for our future. When we do a budget, we don't look for the next 10 months or 12 months. You're always looking 3 to 4 or 5 years down the road, because if you were to look so short-sighted, so many things change. So you always have to constantly be looking forward to not only revenue streams, but expense streams, declining enrollment or increasing enrollments, new building, housing areas that are going in. All of those types of things are always considered, and we're always looking forward. So we're always continuing to analyze programs and staffing, again, against projections, enrollment projections. We monitor all mandated assessment results, and we all know we see those quite often coming from the state, and other data related to student access and success for curriculum alignment. And we identify and explore opportunities for enhancing individualized and personalized learning. Oh, I'm so sorry. I think I should change these. So in doing a school budget, we do something called fund accounting. Most of you are probably used to business accounting. So you have a net profit or loss. Your revenues exceed your expenditures, you have a profit. If your revenues are less than your expenditures, you have a loss. In fund accounting, they equal. So your revenues have to equal your expenditure. So it's called a general fund. In schools also, it's very difficult for us to generate revenue. We're very creative in some of the things we do. You know, we do have tuition students that come into district that we charge for. We do the best we can with investment, so we make sure that we maximize as best we can on our investment income. But really, the sole source, other than the state aid, which we already talked about, is decreasing on a regular basis. The only other option we have is the general fund tax levy. And basically, year over year, that can go up by law 2%. When we did the original budget in March, it was 1.27%. We had cut out the $416,000. It has been restored to a complete 2%. Year-over-year increase. So our proposed tax levy for next year is $57,917,438. And we were able to do this on the successful appeal of the Chapter 44 assessment and the programming that we talked about at the last meeting in terms of having to expand some programs for students that were at risk that we were working towards have been restored. So those are things that are back in the planning stages, and we're looking forward to being able to control those programs going forward. So again, our tax levy increase proposed is 2% year over year. We did not have any banked cap, and there were no other adjustments. The state of New Jersey does allow you to go over the 2% if you have something that we called bank cap. Bank cap comes from prior years. If you didn't budget to the full 2%, it rolls into a banked cap, and you have 3 years to use it. We traditionally budget to the 2% based on the growth of our district and the declining state aid. It kind of ties our hands, so the 2% is where we usually end up. Other adjustments would be things like they do give you an adjustment for health benefit costs, but it's based on whatever the state employee health benefit plan increases year over year, and it has to be more than 5%. And state health has not been there. Our rates have been increasing at a lower rate than the employee state health benefit plan, so we don't get an adjustment for that. So we have a flat 2% increase year over year. One of the good stories to tell this year is we've basically paid off our mortgage. So in September of 2021, we made our final payment on our last referendum, which was in 2004. So our 21-22 school year, this existing school year, we had a budget of $2,152,000 as an expenditure in our budget for to pay the bond referendum. That is zero for next year. So theoretically, that is a direct tax levy decrease, and it's instant tax rate decrease. So that automatically, and you'll see it when we get towards the end of the presentation, that actually will reduce the amount of money we need to raise in taxes, and therefore the local contribution for tax rate. The way we're able to do that is this district has been really good from a board perspective, from an administrative perspective, and a planning perspective year after year after year to begin to plan for projects on a regular basis. So we have a very fluid long-range facility plan. Projects are planned out way in advance in terms of what the needs and the projection is in the district. And we put the money aside each year, little by little, like you would do at home. If you need a new roof and you can't afford $20,000 for a roof, maybe you put $5,000 away a year or whatever you can do. So we kind of build that as part of our process. And that's allowed us to not have to go out to referendum, and this $2.1 million does go directly to the bottom line. So, and we're set up for a long period of time by doing that. That's been the direction of the district long before I was here. It's been BA after BA and administration after administration, and that was the directive and the goals that they had set, and it seems to have just worked out to be a really positive thing for the district. So as you can see, this piece of pie, it's really kind of sad because you can see that we really don't have many revenue streams to be able to support our programs and to be able to support what we do every day in this district. You can see that the biggest piece of the pie is the green one, and that's our tax levy. That's what we just talked about. The tax levy is 81% of our overall budget. Included also some of the other additional funding that we receive, and the purple is local share. So those are things like interest income and those types of things. It's a very small amount because we can't. Interest rates, hopefully, we'll be able to do a little bit better. It's a double whammy, I think, but from an investment perspective. But rates have been so low for so long, we did reduce quite a bit this year. State aid is 6.6%. So if you look at that in the whole big picture, 81% is tax levy, which is your real estate taxes, and 6.6% is given back to us by our income taxes that we pay to the state of New Jersey. So it's really immaterial in the whole big picture. We also have something called the fund balance. So remember when I said our revenues and expenditures have to equal? If our revenues exceed our expenditures, and traditionally they have here in several years. We also use the excess fund balance, which is what it's called, to as a revenue stream in a budget 2 years later. So that number is determined in the annual audit, and it's given back in not the existing budget, but the following budget. So that's about 5%, 5.6%, and it's consistent year over year. So we maintain that. And that's one of those things that you have to be careful with, because if you're not planning long term and you all of a sudden don't have that money, you've got a big hole that you have to fill somewhere. So either you find that amount of money, 5.6% more in revenue, or you cut your expenditures by that amount of money. And it's about $3.8 to $4 million. So it's really difficult to do that. And then the final thing that we have is capital reserve. And those are budget monies that we specifically budget to take out of capital reserve, which is a fund specifically only for capital projects. Those capital projects are part of our long-range facility plan. They're approved by the board. They're approved by committees. And the final approval comes from the state of New Jersey when it's time to spend the money. When we go through the process for planning those projects, it needs to be approved by the state of New Jersey before we can even go out to bid. So this year, that's $4.2 million. So the next slide is specifically the year-over-year numbers. So as you can see, the 21-22 budget is $75 million, and the 22-23 budget is $71.9 million. It's down $3.8 million. That's a little bit misleading on its face, because there is something else that rolls into revenue, and it's called prior year encumbrances. And what an encumbrance is, it's a number that we are allowed to carry forward from the prior year budget because the service has either been provided or the goods have been received and we don't have a receivable. So it's not a payable, it's an encumbrance. They allow us to move that money forward. So basically what that looks like then, and you'll see it on the expenditure side. Remember, I told you your revenues equal your expenditures. Well, when you look at 21-22, revenues don't equal your expenditures. They're off the prior year encumbrances because there's nowhere to capture that. So that's prior year money that we're allowed to use on those specific items in the current year budget. So without some of those things, the other big decrease that you'll see year over year are our grants, which is what you'll see in special revenue fund is our grants. It's what I call Fund 20. And basically, we've received $1.8 million in grants. That's our ESSER money that we've received, a lot of the CARES Act money that we've received, that we're planning for the future that we don't anticipate receiving for future years. So the trick with the grant funds, and it's really actually an easy budget thing, you can't spend more than you receive because you don't get to raise Fund 20 money. It's given to you by grants. You can write grants, but you can't spend more than you get. So we're required by law to budget 85% of the prior year, but only on certain titles. So our ESSA money, so our Title 1, 2, 3, and 4, we budget 85%, and our IDA, we budget 85%. So that's why you see a $1.2 million decrease. That's part of the 3.8, which is a little misleading. Our general fund, which is our Fund 10 operating budget, is up year over year $915,000. And then we're reducing the amount we're withdrawing. This year we budgeted 5.187 for capital projects. Next year we're only budgeting 4.2, so that's another 962 that you see being reduced. So on its face, it looks like we're reducing 3.8, but those are special projects. That won't ever happen again. So the expenditures that are included, my computer's yelling at me. It wants to restart. Can I wait an hour? Okay, let's see if that worked. It's barking at me. Okay, so expenditures that are included in our general fund, and this is our operating budget. So these are the things that we use every day. That's our instructional programs, our special education programs, instructional support services, which includes our library, counseling services, our health office, our curriculum supervisors and staff training, our administrative expenses, which is the superintendent's office, the principal's human resources, the business office, and the information technology. That's what we call our administrative expenditures. We have an operations department, which is our maintenance, custodial, grounds, and security department. Transportation. We have a very robust transportation program here. And this is one way that we are able to successfully fund a lot of our own programming. What we do is we move 6,000 kids a day. So not only do we move the Hunterdon Central students, we also move the East Amwell students, we move the Delaware Township students, and we move the Flemington-Raritan students. So by doing that, we're able to defer some of the costs. We're able to run our buses. I've got buses doing 2 and 4 runs a day. So, they pick up at elementary run and they bring those kids where they need to go, and then they come and get the high school students and they drop them off. Actually, I think it's the other way around. Then they'll go get preschool students and they'll bring them where they need to go, and then they'll drop off a half-day preschool student and pick up. So they're constantly moving. So that's the way we're able to get efficiency and we're able to save money. That's what the state of New Jersey likes for us to do, and we have a really good program with that. It's called, in our district, we call it JTC, which is a Joint Transportation Commission, and we share 50% of this program with Flemington-Raritan. So we have 85 buses. So Flemington-Raritan owns, 42 and a half of them. So we share all of those expenses 50-50 down the line, from staffing to equipment to overhead, and some of our expenditures as well is allocated out, and it's reconciled at the end of each year. We do all of those things here. So we do the budget, we pay all the employees, we insure all the buses, we do all of the risk management on the buses, we maintain the buses. So a big piece is done here, so we do push some of those costs down, but that's one of the ways we're able to be successful in saving some of the money that we've had to save in other areas that have been cut. The next big ticket number in our budget is employee benefits and taxes. So that's our FICA taxes, that's our PERS, our pensions, that's our health benefits. All of those types of things roll up into what we call employee benefits. We have equipment purchases. Any asset in the any piece of equipment in the district that's purchased in excess of $2,000 is booked as a fixed asset. That's the law. So we do budget them, and it's something called Fund 12. So I kind of fall back sometime on just rote things. So if I say Fund 12, it's a capital asset. And then, of course, we have capital projects, which we just talked about in terms of it's money that we've put away for planning for long term. And as those projects come up, we budget to take them out of capital reserve during the year and then complete the projects. If the project doesn't go to fruition, so for example, we had a project budgeted for this year that when we started to go through the drawings and it just wasn't conducive to what we needed to do. So the project isn't going to happen. So we don't spend the money. The money stays in capital reserve for a future project or a redesign of the project that we were hoping to do, or some other way to do it. So just because we budget it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to come to fruition. We can go out to bid, and especially in today's day and age, the bid can come in way over what we initially thought the budget was going to be. So that's a decision-making process. Do we go ahead with excess funds that we already have in capital reserves, or do we call it a day and hope that the funding will be, or we could go out to bid, or we can hope that the funding will be less in future years if we need to do that. So that's another force of, that's also included in our expenditures. So all of those things have their own category. And as you can see, regular education, those are instructional costs as well as benefits. Those are those two big pieces of the pie. So 26% is spent on regular education, and 22% is based on our benefits. So this gives you more of a detail of specifically where they're going. So regular instruction and program, those are our gen ed teachers, textbooks, supplies for our gen ed classrooms. And you'll see that that's going up year over year, $193,000. Our special ed programs, again, that's included in that number is staffing and supplies for those specific programs. Instructional support services, we talked about that being the library, child study team, guidance, nurse, curriculum, staffing. So you'll see that each of these categories most of them are going down year over year. And a lot of that has to do with included in the actual budget expenditures, as I talked about, included those prior year encumbrances that aren't there this year. But overall, our biggest numbers are our instructional, regular programs, instructional support services, and our employee benefits. $15 million of our budget next year is just employee benefits. And this is just a quick graphic of we always talk about what business we're in, and we look at these numbers, and I think my predecessor used to say we're in the people business. 78.2% of our budget is spent on employee salaries and employee benefits. So those are some big numbers, but those are our assets. Those are where we focus and get the best results. So this is kind of a visual that's pretty obvious. These are the 22-23 capital reserve projects that we have planned for next year. We have budgeted $4.225 million. Again, this is money that's budgeted to come directly out of the capital reserve fund. This again is just an initial budget. If we don't do the project, we don't move the money. The money doesn't get moved until the project is approved. And you'll see even on tonight's agenda, there's money to move from capital reserve for some of the existing projects we're working on. So included in the $4 million is paving the IMC lot. We do rotate the parking lots. I think this is the third in a series over the last 5 years. It's estimated at $2.25 million or $2.250. Outside seating covering for the cafeteria outside the 910 building. I think with we struggle at times with seating for our one block, so this was one of the solutions. We do have a project going in this summer that includes a structural building, and this will be part of adding on to that. So the students have a place to go to eat outside once that project is completed. We're continuing to do classroom updates and facility room upgrades to bring them into more collaborative spacing. So this is a standard that we have in our budget year over year, and we anticipate to continue with those projects. We do have a classroom that it's for one of our special education programs that needs to be renovated that we've been working on for a couple of years. So this is another initiative that's part of next year's planning. We are working with the security upgrades that we've had to do from a cybersecurity perspective, it's caused us to have to do a lot of redundancy and backups in different areas of our campus so that we're more secure and cyber secure. So we have about a $75,000 project that will include putting in some more fiber work to be able to allow us to do that going forward. We have a small amount of money to go, we have $200,000 in the JV baseball field upgrades needed to just bring the field up to, we had a little bit of damage and overall wear and tear that's caused us to need to invest a little bit of money to get us to the next level. And we continue to look at additional seating for students with the one block lunch, and we've been successful in removing lockers that the students no longer use and actually put in bench seating so that the students have a place to sit and eat their lunches. So that's, again, another piece going in for next year. Those are the biggest pieces of the budget. Well, those are the total, that's the total budget. And these were the highlights. And at the end of the day, I think this is probably the most important slide for most people. Because this is what impacts you, and it impacts your taxes. So what this slide is saying, the calculation is done based on equalization value of your homes in your area, the number of students from your specific region or town or township that sends to the high school. And that percentage is allocated based on the total tax levy, the $57 million that we talked originally. So this is a top level view. So for the homeowners in Delaware Township, we're projecting 137 students to be in our district next year at the high school level, which is 7.7% of the levy. That will cause your taxes to go down per $100,000 of assessed value, $54.30. So if your house is assessed at $100,000, I'm doing simple math, your taxes will go down $54.30. The thing to remember here is this is just one piece of your bill, especially as a regional district. So I know I live in a regional district and I get really excited when my elementary school or my high school says, I'm going to save you money. But at the same time, the high school or the elementary school goes up. So you don't see that $54.30 on your bill. So I can only present to you what our tax levy and how our tax levy is going to impact your taxes. East Amwell is projecting to go down $40.12 on $100,000 of assessed value. Flemington is projected to go down $15.52. Raritan is going down $11.73, and Reddington is going up $11.48. The reason is because of the number of students, the equalization value, and ratables are considered in this number. So those things didn't change as rapidly for Reddington as they did for others. The biggest reason that we talked about in terms of seeing these rates go down year over year is due to that $2.152 million for the debt service payoff. So that isn't coming back without having to go out for referendum again. I do not foresee in any near future that this district will need to do that, short of a major catastrophe. We are well positioned to move forward with money that we have in capital reserves to be able to keep the district in line with their goals and maintaining their facilities for safety and security measures without having to go out to referendum. I think that's all. So tonight, hopefully, we'll be able to adopt the final budget as it's been revised and presented. And then we'll get it to the county office to get it finalized into your tax assessors.